Almost every faction across the galaxy has what you might consider an iconic image associated with it. For the Adeptus Astartes, it may be the sight of drop pods falling from the sky to launch a sudden assault, whilst the Astra Militarum might be represented by a vast array of lumbering tanks, or the Orcs by a never-ending mass of loud, green and stompy infantry. The Tau Empire, and its breakaway state the Farsight Enclaves in particular, also have such an image in my mind. A battlesuit assault, as the elite of the Fire Caste leap or dive into the fray with their weapons ablaze. This image is associated with one class of battlesuit in particular, but there have been many more classes of suits built by the Earth Caste for a variety of battlefield roles. In this log, we will share some of the details of these iconic suits of armour, as well as looking at some of those more commonly deployed across the galaxy. This is Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. Battlesuit technology has been a staple of the Earth and Fire castes pretty much as long as the 5 castes have been united under the Tau Va. They are not, however, from the days before the coming of the Ethereals as far as we know. Records of the Mont Tau are all but non-existent, save perhaps to the Ethereals, but in those days the Tau were not the technological powerhouse you would know today. The first record of battlesuit deployment, though not even close to the style of suit we know now, was in 576 M39 during a campaign on the now sept world of Tash Va in the first sphere of expansion. This was a style of suit whose specifications are probably buried in the archives of the Earth Caste on Tau itself, but it was known as the T-Series, I'll explain what that means later, and used what humans would know as fossil fuels as a power source. Though they have long since upgraded beyond such crude technology, I believe that the rite of battlesuit use has been roughly unchanged throughout the Tau Va's history. Battlesuits are known in the Tau tongue as the Herex Vre, roughly translated as the hero's mantle, and as the name suggests, only a hero of the Tau may be permitted to don it. The right to become a battlesuit pilot is tied intrinsically to advancement through the Fire Caste hierarchy, specifically the event known as the Trial by Fire. After 4 years of service as a Chasse La, the lowest rank of trooper in the Tau military, any individual member of the Fire Caste may take the trial as a means of progressing through the ranks. The exact nature of the trial varies from one sept to another, and likely also by rank. For example, Commander Farsight on his time on Viola before his exile was forced to die as a bodyguard in a hallucination come simulation in order to become a commander, as I recall. Whatever the circumstances of the trial, on its completion, assuming the aspirant succeeds and survives, the Chasse La will have been promoted to a Chasse Oui and permitted to don the Herex Vre. There are trials for promotion to the later ranks as well, from Chasse Oui to Chasse Vre, and then to Chasse L and possibly Chasse O, and this does also permit the piloting of other battlesuits as well, but again, we'll get to some of those details later. However, I'm sure there's more than a few people wondering what exactly the Herex Vre is, how it works and all of that business. Now, I'm not going to spill all the secrets of the Earth Caste, can't have people building knockoff battlesuits all over the place, but there are a few basic details I feel I can share. Battlesuits are, in essence, exceptionally advanced suits of armour / exosuits. Made of a lightweight nanocrystalline alloy with a liquid metal coating, some variants of battlesuit have been referred to as dreadnoughts, just faster and more elegant, but they have more in common with power armour really, compared to those walking tombstones, and some larger ones could be more likened to towering knight-class walkers. Each battlesuit class is designed for a specific purpose on the field of battle, though they do come with a degree of versatility in terms of weapons and other support systems, but there are also some universal similarities. Almost all variants of the Herex Vre are equipped with black sun filters to aid with night vision, and most come with a wide variety of sensors, usually mounted in the head to aid the pilot who sits within the heart of the suit. Much of the control of at least larger suits can be done without physical input, as some battlesuits have an interface that can be controlled by nothing short of the eye movements of the pilot and blink clicks, thus keeping all vitals safer from harm should damage be sustained to an extremity of the suit. However, such systems would not be beyond the control of another who learned the Tau language and all the various inputs required to operate a battlesuit, assuming they were able to fit into the thing. As a result, the Earth Caste implemented a countermeasure, a system that kills, usually not all that painlessly, any who lack either the clearance or the control to properly pilot a battlesuit. The other question many would have about the Hevexfra concerns the naming conventions associated with each classification. Simply using the code associated with each class of battlesuit, an individual with knowledge of these conventions should broadly know the size and role of the suit in question, as well as some other useful features such as the age of its design and more. The original battlesuits, as mentioned at the beginning, were known as the T series. I assume T was for Tau, but I don't have access to the minds or records of those responsible. Following their retirement, the V series of battlesuits was introduced, but the modern ones seen across the galaxy today are the X series. As a result, the first letters in the classification of all modern battlesuits are XV. The V series used fission power, so I assume at least early X series used fusion, and so the V was retained to denote the continued use of nuclear power. I didn't write the code, so I can't exactly tell you. Following the XV, a number is assigned to denote the mass classification of the suit, in effect telling you exactly what its size is. Some of the smallest of the Hevexfra are hardly if at all larger than a fire warrior, and receive the classification XV1, though there is one exception which is actually XV0, though that's still experimental. The largest XV battlesuit produced to date has the classification XV10 and is slightly smaller than an Imperial Knight, I suppose, give or take. There are in fact larger battle suits, quote unquote, known as ballistic suits, but many of them have multiple pilots and are awarded the KX classification instead of XV to suggest an advancement, though in truth it is kind of a respecialization. You may have heard of the smallest ballistic suit, the KX-128 Storm Surge, just to give you a sense of scale. After the mass classification, there can be a further number used to specify the role or phase of development for the battlesuit. I'll detail as many of as I can as they come up, but probably the best known or most commonly employed is the number 5. Any battlesuit whose classification ends in a 5 is a stealth battlesuit of some sort, reliant as much on remaining undetected by the enemy as on their armour or the skill of the pilot to avoid detection and harm. Now, not every battlesuit has an extra number or set of numbers assigned after its mass classification, either indicating that it is the baseline model that has finished development, or because it is too versatile to be assigned a particular role or uniquity. Though any battlesuit pilot is more than capable of fighting almost unsupported, it is rare except in the cases of larger mass classifications or commanders to find a battlesuit taking to the field alone. Most are organised into squads of some kind, fighting with their teammates in a tight-knit fellowship, often cemented by the Talisera, a bonding ritual taken between many Firecast fighting groups that is probably as close as they get to family. Almost every pilot or squad also has smaller allies to aid them too, the Corvesa, the Faithful Friends, the Drones. These are, and please calm down if you're of an Imperial disposition, artificial machine intelligences that can be networked together to aid their own processing power. These intelligences aid their battlesuit pilots by providing fire support or pinpointing targets, and having them around will also provide further intel to the pilots and keep enemies occupied. And whilst the drones are valued allies to the Tau, as hinted by their name in the lexicon, they are still support as opposed to quite equally valued. Hard-coded with savior protocols, the drones are able to shield and protect their charges at the cost of damage or even their own destruction. You might think of it as callous for the Tau to be so willing to sacrifice AI like that, but the drones are still not completely disposable and contain self-preservation analysis as well as the savior protocols, and you could probably argue that some of them, if not all of them, have got at least a hint of a personality too. For the sake of brevity, I won't document the entire roster of battlesuits here. Trust me, given the nature of the Earth Caste, there's probably more variations than could even be listed stuck in one level of prototype or another. However, I think it fair to start with what many, including the Tau, consider to be the iconic battlesuit, the XV-8, commonly known as the Crisis battlesuit. The sight of an XV-8 team dropping into the battle is that iconic image I mentioned in the introduction, especially for the Farsight Enclaves who have a greater proportion by some counts. This Mass Class 8 battlesuit stands approximately twice the height of its Fire Warrior pilot, with 3 inbuilt hardpoints on which to mount weapon or support systems which are incredibly diverse depending on the role of the pilot or their team. Said teams are typically a single battlesuit known as a monat, literally meaning lone warrior, or they are composed of 3 pilots in a tarot car, 3 minds as one, though I have heard of, if not seen personally, larger teams being deployed as well. The Shazwi in a tarot car team will likely have taken the Talisera together, and many teams will fight together for long periods of time, offering huge flexibility to their commanders, whether in a sudden Cao Yon counter-assault or a devastating Montcar strike. For those Shazwi who survive another 4 years and complete a second trial by fire, the rank of Chasseur grants them the right to lead a tarot car, but some with the most impeccable records may be chosen instead for the role of Saznami. These are bodyguards to the commanders of various hunter cadres, and whilst you don't see them all that often, they are there for one job and one job alone: keep the commander alive, no matter what. There are many stories of Saznami heroics, but don't expect them to have a high life expectancy given they will literally block attacks for the commander, and the negative implications of a Saznami surviving when their commander falls means that such a thing basically almost never happens. There are several variants on the XV-8 as you might expect, the most famous probably being the XV-88, the Broadside battlesuit. This variant of the Herexfer trades the jetpack and general mobility of the XV-8 for a particle accelerator power source, improved armour, and a massive heavy weapon or two. The original concept behind the XV-88 was an attempt to fuse the XV-8 with another renowned piece of wargear within the Tal Va, the fearsome railgun mounted most commonly on the TX-7 Hammerhead gunship. Nowadays, handheld heavy rail rifles are used instead for the sake of efficiency, but the fact that such an idea even came to pass just shows how inventive and skilled the Earth Caste can be on its day, or most days to be fair. I believe given the Broadside is coded XV-88 and the heavier Storm Surge is the KX-128 or KX-12-8, that the use of 8 after mass classification is an indicator of heavy fire support battlesuits, but then the even larger Taunar battlesuit is the KX-139. But then other battlesuits coded with a 9 are typically close support, so maybe 8 is an indicator of range as well as everything else. Sometimes even the codings confuse me. One of the more recent XV-8 innovations is itself a modification built on top of another modification. The XV-8-05, noted as such because the XV-85 is a stealth suit by convention, so don't use it, was developed as a bulkier and more advanced version of the XV-8 for use by commanders. The Enforcer, as the battlesuit is known, comes with extra hardpoints as well as a rugged defense that is favoured by many lead from the front type commanders. But from the Enforcer came another development, the XV-86 Cold Star. This battlesuit was in its final stages of development around the time of the Farside expedition after the Damocles Gulf Crusade. The legendary Ovesa brought a fully functional prototype with him on the expedition, though it was not tested in active combat up to that point to my knowledge. The primary difference between the XV-86 and its compatriots is both aesthetic and functional, as the Cold Star is fitted with fins that grant it exceptional streamlining for faster battlefield movement. It is also void capable, as noted by the 6 after its mass classification. Whilst I suspect any XV-8 could manage in space somewhat, even if it needed a little tinkering, the extra manoeuvrability of the Cold Star makes it ideally suited for the task. In case you think I'm just making this stuff up, the XV-46 battlesuit is specifically designed for use in the void. Piloting an XV-86 is typically an honour reserved for the most renowned of commanders, and whilst every battlesuit is incredibly advanced, the Cold Star has vast amounts of sensor and telemetry data available for its pilot, and I've even heard of them having inbuilt AIs of sorts. Actually, that's a point I didn't mention earlier. It isn't actually necessary for a Tau to pilot a battlesuit in order for the suit to operate and unleash hell, especially for the XV-8 and its variants. Some of you may have heard of the XV-88, known as Chasseur Oblotai, an AI modelled on the battlesuit for the former mentor of Commander Farsight that forms part of his legendary formation, the Eight. However, there is a lesser known case of mass battlesuit assaults without a single living Tau being present. Sometime after the Second Battle of Mugalath Bay, the Sept world of Vashya was assaulted by the somewhat enigmatic Xenos known simply as the Hrud. Due to incredible chronomantic abilities, no Tau could survive long in the presence of the Xenos as they were rapidly aged and thus killed. In response, the commander of Vashya initiated something known as the Avatar Command Protocol, allowing the XV-8 pilots to remotely operate their suits and thus counter the Hrud who were driven off. We haven't seen full AI battlesuit armies as of yet to my knowledge, but if certain war zones are deemed too hostile for even an XV-8 pilot to survive, I would not be surprised to see it developed at some point or another. Though there are a lot of rare alternative XV-8s that I could go into, the last one we'll address here is the XV-8-02. An XV-8-2 would be a prototype XV-8 by convention, hence the naming pattern matching what the Enforcer's supposed to be. This style of battlesuit is typically reserved either for Saznami or for commanders, though it is still rare for the majority of Septs due to the experimental nature of its design. The typical nanocrystalline alloy of the XV-8 is replaced with or upgraded to an iridium alloy, granting the XV-8-02 the rare name of the Crisis Iridium battlesuit. Not exactly that original, but there you go. It offers a much greater degree of protection even compared to the XV-8-05, more on the level of an XV-8-8 than anything else without the loss of maneuverability, having been developed in response to a sniper assassination that caused a rout in the Clodate world suppression, so you do still need that maneuverability. Either if more iridium is found, or the ally can be produced en masse, I fully expect that, given enough time and development, the XV-8-02 will see a much wider deployment. Will it replace the XV-8? I don't know, we'll have to see. The next major battlesuit group I wish to address is one I already referred to, the stealth suits. Denoted by a 5 after their mass classification, these battlesuits are generally not as tough defensively as the XV-8 variants, but they make up for that in their stealth systems that render them nigh on undetectable. The majority of stealth suits are dotted with distortive stealth field generators that mask the battlesuit from conventional sight and from many advanced sensor systems as well. It doesn't make them totally invisible, especially not stood out in the open, but they are hard to focus on or target, and when in cover they can all but fade into the background. The smallest and original stealth suit is the XV-15, a Class 1 battlesuit not much larger than a fully armoured fire warrior and armed with the anti-infantry burst cannon. Like the XV-8, it comes with a jetpack to aid with manoeuvrability. Sure, it's not the stealthiest thing to use, I've never heard of a silent jetpack, I don't know if you have, but as a get-out-of-dodge tool, there are few better things available. However, the XV-15 has now been retired almost entirely due to a battle known as the Kappa Mortis incident, a skirmish with the Ultramarines under then second captain Severus Agaman. Despite wounding the captain, the forces under Chassel Nightwind were driven off, and an XV-15 helmet was recovered from the battlefield before eventually finding its way to the hands of the Inquisition's Ordo Xenos. This forced an acceleration in the replacement of the XV-15 and saw the XV-25 stealth suit become standard issue instead. This larger suit, being Mass Class 2, is more akin to the size of an Astartes than a Fire Warrior, as in the case of the XV-15. Most of the equipment is broadly similar to its predecessor, with the burst cannon and the jetpack, though some members of the Tarot Car usually fielded can use a fusion blaster to aid in versatility. The XV-25 also comes with nutrient reservoirs to aid them in extended missions behind enemy lines or otherwise away from the rest of their cadre, and they are among the most independent forces within the Fire Caste. Quite often, XV-25 teams are left to their own devices, observing a strict comm silence with their commanders and thus unable to receive orders. Whilst this gives them the freedom to do what they feel best to complete a mission or aid their compatriots, it actually leaves the stealth Shazwi a step aside from said compatriots, being viewed as eccentric or even as loaders, or sort of pariahs amongst their own teams. Typically, XV-25 pilots will be volunteers as opposed to being assigned, and whilst I'm sure they have a tight bond with their teammates in the Tarot Car, they are still relatively insular and isolationist, especially amongst the communal and expressive Tau Va. Further evidence of this can be found when one examines the larger cousin to the XV-25, the XV-95 Ghost Keel battlesuit. This is obviously much larger than the XV-25 being mass class 9, and it is considered the pinnacle of stealth suit technology, at least for now. I'm sure someone somewhere is working on a bigger one. However, unlike many battlesuits, the XV-95 wasn't initially a matter of public record, even after it was completed. Ethereal Supreme Aun Va, now a hologram following his assassination at Ugalath Bay, personally ordered the creation of a program that led to the XV-95, which took place near to the second sphere sept world of Nadras. Each pilot held the Chasseur rank, as all Ghost Keel pilots do today, and they were hand-picked to pilot the new variant of the Herexfre in covert operations. Even though these first missions were in the early stages of the third sphere of expansion, back when Aun Va was actually alive, the decision was taken to only reveal the existence of the XV-95 when it would have the best impact on morale and society. Perhaps in homage to their name and their origins, the XV-95s were unofficially nicknamed the Ghosts of Nadras, and they are becoming more and more popular with every passing Tau Seer, the equivalent to a year on Tau itself, approximately 300 days by Terran measurements. As much as they have become a propaganda exercise for the Ethereals because the Ethereals are insufferable, the Chasseur pilots of the XV-95 are far from suited to the public eye. They were insular anyway, having been recruited from XV-25 teams across the Empire or the Enclaves, and operating as a monad on extended behind enemy lines ops can change this from being insular to becoming introverted to some extent. In fact, it is not uncommon for an XV-95 pilot to form a very close bond with the battlesuit itself or the advanced AI integrated into it that aids in operations and keeps tabs on their well-being. Some of the pilots probably prefer the company of said AI to other Tau, and honestly, I can't blame them. I mean, I've wandered this galaxy for long enough to understand the way the ghosts feel. Maybe I should get tinkering with the suit AI. Evasive did it. Why can't I? Anyway, getting sidetracked. There is one other stealth suit currently deployed on the battlefield that I know of, though looking at its classification, I would understand if you couldn't guess which one it is. This is the XV-22, the planned successor to the XV-15 had Kappa Mortis not happened and forced the easy-built XV-25 into mass production. But you may be asking, well, why isn't it coded with a 5? It's a stealth suit. Well, that's because despite being about the same age as the XV-25, the XV-22 is still in R&D, as noted by that 2, meaning it's a prototype in field testing. Probably when it's finished it'll be called the XV-25-02, but then there have been versions deployed without the stealth technology, so would it actually get the 5? I'm getting distracted again. The XV-22 in its stealth configuration has one particularly famous user, the leader of the 3rd and 5th spheres of expansion, Oshasera herself. Her suit, at least when worn in full, has many design cues you now see in the XV-95, particularly its oft-forgotten helm, and Shadow Sun usually uses a pair of fusion blasters as her preferred weapons. As it is piloted by the Mistress of Cao Yon and is also a stealth suit in itself, you may have never seen it, even if you shared a battlefield with it, but it was announced to the wider populace, to my knowledge at least, in one heck of an opening statement. Having been awarded to the recently awakened Shadow Sun by Aun Va, the new High Commander used the suit to destroy the statue of her former colleague and the former High Commander, Oshova, outside his training dome on Viola, the last statue of Farsight left standing in the Empire after his exile, come defection, come whatever you like to call it. Now accompanied by her drones and occasionally a Saznami XV-25 team, so I've heard in the past at least, one could easily argue that the success or failure of Oshasera and the 5th sphere will probably determine the fate of the XV-22 in turn. To conclude, let's take a look at some of the larger battlesuits, those larger than the XV-8 and even the XV-95. But before we get to the biggest, aside from ballistic suits because I don't class those as battlesuits per se, let's look at those on the scale of the Ghost Keel, specifically the original battlesuit in its class, the XV-9. This battlesuit is somewhat divisive amongst the Earth Caste and even the Imperials due to being somewhat resource intensive to produce, as it incorporates a fair whack of experimental technology into its design. That said, many amongst the Fire Caste do swear by the XV9, as it fills a role that the XV8 cannot perform half as well: close support and counter-assault, using short-range weapons and high maneuverability to great effect. Currently, they are only reserved for those holding the rank of chasseur, presumably due to both trust and to rarity for the XV9, and it is unofficially known as hazard armour just to contextualise the danger of piloting one due to the operational range. That said, you can and do see XV9 tarot cards, especially amongst the rather xenophobic Kelshan sept, who seem to favour the XV9 over some other septs. But of course, there are larger battlesuits than the XV9. Anyone who's seen the fire or water cast at work of late will certainly be aware of that. There is no baseline XV10 battlesuit, at least not yet, because the one I expect to become the XV10 currently remains in the final stages of field testing. This is the XV104, or the XV10-4 if you prefer, with the 4 being an indicator of its late test phase status, better known to most of you I suspect as the Riptide. This engineering marvel stands about twice as high as the XV8 without sacrificing any of the mobility of its predecessor, and whilst it doesn't have as broad a weapon variety, it does pack one heck of a punch with its primary and secondary systems. The reason for all of this is due to the power source of the XV104, or at least part of it. It uses a standard fusion reactor most of the time, which shows just how far fusion power can go, but there is a secondary system for a power boost and stabilization if needed. This is a dark matter power source known as the Nova reactor. It's still somewhat experimental and totally not 100% safe for use, hence the continued use of the 4 in the classification since they're still fiddling with it. As much as they are not healthy for the pilots, all of whom are chasseurs who have spent extensive time as Saznami as well, without the Nova reactor, the XV104 would be as cumbersome as an Imperial war machine of a similar size. Seriously, why are they so damn cumbersome? Useless Imperials. Though the XV104 was being worked on for a fair amount of time, both before and after the Nova reactor breakthrough, its battlefield debut came alongside the debut of the third Sphere of Expansion, the first assault on Mugalath Bay, known at the time as Agralan, by the Imperia. They proved valuable counters to the Imperial heavy armour, their shield generators protecting them even from heavy assault, whilst their XV8 8-level armour did the rest, and their jetpacks kept them from being pinned down. Unsurprisingly, they've proven to be exceptionally popular with the Fire Caste all over the Empire and the Enclaves once defectors brought the schematics over. But there is a reason that, a few rare cases perhaps exempted, you don't see whole wings of XV104s on the battlefield. For a start, it's kind of impractical. The Fire Caste doesn't work with an over-reliance on one thing in particular. It's the combination between all aspects of the Fire Caste that make it work. Nothing to do with Ethereals, in case you needed the reminder the Tauvar will work just fine without them, shut up. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, XV104s are not easy to make en masse. Something about their specific nanocrystalline alloy is harder to obtain than, say, for the XV8. I haven't seen the specs myself, so I can't say for sure where the issue lies. And whilst the Nova reactor and the advanced AI that also fill key roles are not easy to make, the alloy seems to be the limiting factor at the moment. That said, unlike the XV9, which remains divisive amongst the Earth and Ethereal castes, the XV104 is a smash hit across the board. Once the final issues have been resolved, the XV10, as I suspect it will be renamed, will be a staple for a long, long time, and may even become more iconic than the XV8 given enough time. However, even though the XV104 isn't fully finalised officially despite widespread use, there are already existing variants built upon it. The first one completed was a suit classified as the XV107, also known as the Arvana, and deployed on a planet we've already mentioned, Kelshan. However, whilst the vital importance of the XV107 to the survival of the Sept cannot really be understated, there's one more thing more interesting than that. The origin story of the Arvana really piqued my interest. You might have noticed that, with one major and one less known exception, the Tau in the Empire don't really know how to say no to the Ethereals, and the only recorded cases pretty much always belong to the Fire Caste. Farsight, and I believe it was Shasso Rin who had the argument with Hollow Iron Va. The name slips my mind at this moment. But Kelshan's Earth Caste had someone capable of their own little rebellion, an individual known as Sphio Shoan. The XV-107 development program on Kelshan had its metaphorical plug pulled by the Ethereal Council due to costs, but Shoan was not to be denied in realizing their vision. They began to siphon funds and resources from a stealth suit program in order to see Arvanas completed, in complete defiance of the Ethereals, and not one but 3 prototypes were finished in time to protect Kelshan's capital from a Tyranid assault. But perhaps most shockingly, the Ethereals, well, I don't want to say they didn't mind, but they didn't make Shoan disappear as they did to Oshova and some poor watercast who had a colleague speak out of turn. After all, when the Chaos Space Marine warband The Purge assaulted Kelshan in 998 M41, it was Shoan and his Remora stealth drones, which could well have been a result of the project the Arvana was appropriating from, that are credited with saving the planet from being poisoned to death. And as if that wasn't enough, Shoan went on to create the other major XV-104 derivative battlesuit, the XV-109 Yavara. Following the success of the XV-107, the XV-109 was somewhat rushed through development, but it is a potent asset in its own right, as well as, to some, a changing statement of intent. The XV-107 is a defensive version of the Riptide, trading speed for insane firepower, but the XV-109 goes pretty much in the opposite direction. The range of the Riptide is sacrificed, but the Yavara is even faster than the baseline and wields weapons designed for short-ranged annihilation. Perhaps you could argue it is the best embodiment of Mon Ka exhibited by a variant of the Herex Fur. Strike hard and fast against the targets of opportunity, then move on at speed and repeat without getting caught in attrition. And given Kelshan has always been more defensively minded up to the development of the XV-109, some say that it marks a shift towards an expansionist and aggressive approach in future. Heck, given the individual behind it is one of the most rebellious non-Enclave's Earth Caste members, I wouldn't even be that surprised. Good luck to him. Maybe break away, do the sensible thing. You know we'll welcome you. And there you have it, a look into the various battlesuits of the Tau. There are so many variations that it would be nigh on impossible to cover them all. I realise now I completely forgot the Earth Caste pilot array modification for Ovace's XV-104 and the life support suite in Shasso Bravestorm's XV-802. But that said, the battlesuits are the image of the Tau Va, both for the Tau and for the enemies of the greater good. Who knows quite how far the brightest lights in the Earth Caste will be able to take the concept, but I look forward to finding out, even if I don't quite have the smarts to contribute, and all this storytelling lark takes quite a lot of time, let me tell you. Anyway, I'm gonna go and tinker with that Cold Star AI a little since I mentioned it earlier. Might be nice to get at least something to talk to besides myself and you lot by proxy. That and research for a Mar the Major milestone log means that there may be delays before the next log is ready to transmit, but when we get there, we'll go back to some ancient history, an event and a group that has marked an entire legion of Astartes since. Thank you for watching Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again for the greater good. Goodbye.